Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Matt Zakreski, clinical psychologist and speaker, and I'm here to talk to you today about hope. So, if you are here to learn about hope, then you're in the right place. And if you've stumbled into this recording some other way, welcome. I hope, yes, it's a bad joke, you have a good time. I'm going to enable the media. There we go. So, I'm in the business of hope, how to keep believing when things feel impossible. So, like I said, I'm Dr. Matt Zakreski, clinical psychologist, neurodiversity advocate, and what I like to call a grown up gifted kid. In my life, I have had many jobs, but one of which has been a professional cartoonist. I've also been a bartender, a soccer referee, a travel agent, a tutor, a writer. I've worked in a video store. I've been a psychologist. I've had many jobs. I am also, and this will be relevant for this talk, I promise, a brain tumor survivor. So all of this is going to factor in, but I want you to know who's going to be talking to you about hope for the next 45 minutes or so. And it is worth noting that this presentation will discuss suicide and suicidal ideation. So as always, when we have those sort of content pieces, make sure you take care of yourself. If this becomes too much, feel free to step away, pause the video, and you can always reach out to me for additional support. So why do people come to therapy? Why do people come and talk to somebody like me? As this GIF points out very beautifully, where were we? Oh, yes, the pit of despair. If you haven't looked around recently or read the news or watched outside or checked on social media, it feels like everything is on fire and everything is terrible all the time. And that is one of the reasons people come to therapy, especially over the last three or so years as we have continued to navigate COVID, is this idea of, yeah, things are pretty intense out there. And sometimes talking to somebody who's neutral and supportive can be a helpful thing. Now, I don't have all the answers. If I had the answers, I would have called Dr. Fauci years ago. But I can sit there with you and hold space for those feelings. And ideally, you leave that hour with me with a little bit more hope than you showed up with. So, what is hope, right? What is this thing we're talking about today? To have hope is to want an outcome that makes your life better in some tangible way. Hope is the expectation that one will have positive experiences or that potentially negative or threatening situation will not materialize. And your life will ultimately result in a favorable state of affairs. That is a definition from the American Psychological Association. And I like that one because not only is it this positive experience, but it's also this thing, maybe this bad thing won't happen. And that's okay too. Where does hope come from? So, hope is a very personal thing. It comes from your confidence in your own life, your personal values and dreams. It's also a very human thing. We as a species are not content to be content. If you look through the developmental and fossil record of human behavior, you will see consistently humans have reached for the stars and aim to make things better. We don't settle well. We constantly tinker and improve and seek to make things better. And sometimes we fall on our collective faces. But sometimes something beautiful happens. And from a therapy perspective, our brains are lazy. Our brains like to make a story and stick to it. So our brains will pick a story that makes things easy to tell. They will find pieces of information that fit that story, and they'll pay less attention to ones that don't. This is what the young people call main character energy. Hope gives us a guiding principle to be the main characters of our own lives. Tough to have a conversation about hope without quoting probably my favorite movie. Hope is a good thing, maybe the best of things, and no good thing ever dies. Now, I love this quote for many reasons, but I particularly like it in the context of the movie. No, very few characters in modern cinema have had it quite as bad as Andy Dufresne. And while there are some spoilers in this particular part of the story, when he says that to Red, or played by Morgan Freeman in the movie, he has had a terrible time. He has been sexually assaulted in prison. He's been beaten up. He's been physically assaulted. He's realized that he took the rap for a crime he didn't commit, that the real murderer is out there, that he's participated in large scale fraud and the warden is going to hang him out to dry for it. And he's been sent to the hole or solitary confinement. In the midst of all of that, Andy Dufresne grabs onto Hope and doesn't let go. And oftentimes I say to my clients, I can't make the bad things in your life not happen to you, and I can't keep more bad things from happening to you. But as long as you are nurturing onto that little glimmer of hope, that tiny ember, then we've got a chance to make things better. And the people who come to my office, sometimes they don't even want to have hope anymore. They've said, you know what, Dr. Matt, I'm just done with hope. It's like, I don't even know why I'm still doing this, putting one foot in front of the other. And that allows me to authentically say, I don't know why you do either, but it's amazing that you do. Hope versus optimism. So hope is linked to optimism. They're like cousins, but it's not the same thing. Optimism is the attitude or outlook that good things will happen and that your wishes will ultimately be fulfilled. You're looking on the bright side. And hope sort of is the gas that runs the engine of optimism. Hope sets the goals that makes something tangible and gives, pardon the pun, hope that we can be optimistic. What does hope do, right? Hope provides us with those goals and the motivation to meet them. Hope looks to the future and thus makes the present easier to bear, right? So we are constantly living with one foot in the present and one foot in the future. And for those of us who have more hope, that future seems bright, or we can hope that it will be brighter. It allows us to tolerate things as they are now by hoping that they will get better. And this becomes a very important piece of what we're talking about here today. Hope also connects us to a broader cosmic or spiritual, if that's your bag, universe. Hope is something bigger than us. And for some people, that's religion. For some people, that's faith in the universe. For some people, that's faith in nature. And however you get your spiritual connection is wonderful, right? That's a thing to be celebrated. And part of what's connecting you to that is hope. So if we're going to use hope to make goals, we should talk about what makes a good goal. Goals should be smart. Smart goals, I like smart goals. Goals should be specific. So it's not, I hope that I am good at soccer. That's not really a very specific thing because what does good mean? Good like Leo Messi, good like not the worst player on the team, good like I remember to tie my cleats on my feet, not my hands, right? What does good mean? So good goal would be, I want to score 2 goals this season in soccer. That's a specific goal. Then that goes into M, measurable, a thing that you want to do. A lot of times clients will come to me and they'll say, I want to lose weight. I hope I can lose some weight. And I was like, cool. How much does some mean? Because some doesn't mean the same thing to every person. I don't know. Like, I'll know it when I see it. I'm like, that's a great idea. It's a bad goal. So let's say let's lose 10 pounds. Let's lose 10 pounds by Christmas, right? We're making it measurable, both a measurable achievement and a measurable outcome. Then achievable. The goals we make have to be things you can actually do. You know, I work with an 8-year-old right now who really wants to be a professional basketball player someday. And he told me, he's like, my goal is to be able to dunk someday. I want to be able to dunk a basketball. And I think that's awesome, buddy. I love that. There's also literally no way an 8-year-old can dunk a basketball on a 10-foot rim. That's just not going to happen. He can't even pick up the ball with one hand, right? So an achievable goal for him is to hone the skills that he's physically capable of doing right now: dribbling, passing, shooting, playing defense. When puberty inevitably comes for him and he can jump out of the gym, then we'll talk about dunking a basketball. Right now, it's not really an achievable goal, so we should put it on the back burner. Relevant. This is where adults and teachers often mess up when they're trying to give kids hope. You know, a kid comes to you and say, I don't have any friends. Well, someday you'll have so many friends and you'll be the big man on campus. Maybe that's not what your kid wants to be. Maybe the goals that are relevant to that kid are having 2 or 3 good friends that they can go to the comic book store with, or a half dozen friends that they can have over to watch a movie. Those things are fine. Make sure that the goals we're setting are relevant to you and what you're trying to achieve. You know, if you're trying to build a pitch perfect replica of Helm's Deep, and your goal is to build it as fast as you can, I would argue that that's not a very relevant goal for building Helm's Deep. You want to be slow and methodical. You don't gain any extra points for speed and something like that. And last but not least, time bound. As I said before, I want to lose 10 pounds by Christmas. Because the other problem with goals is we want to put a bracket around them. We want to put some sort of context. A time bound goal gives us the right amount of anxiety to get things moving. I want to lose 10 pounds at some time between now and the inevitable heat death of the universe. Well, I can guarantee you that at some point within now and the inevitable heat death of the universe, you will lose 10 pounds. However, we want to make that a little bit more relevant. So before your Thanksgiving party, before Valentine's Day, before next Thursday. Now, this is where we get into achievable, right? I don't know if you can lose 10 pounds before next Thursday, but short of like chopping off a leg. And please don't do that, guys. But that's a good goal. So when we're having hope, that gives us goals to make things optimistic. We want our goals to be smart. To that end, I think hope is a wonderful thing, but it's not enough. It's not going to completely solve the problem for us, right? So we can pray for rain all we want, but you dig a well as you do it, right? This is a wonderful quote. It's another quote by Stephen King. Apparently, he had a lot to say about hope, but this becomes a thing that's really relevant, right? Because you can stand there and look to the sky and pray for rain, but there's so much more you can do when you're done with that. So I tell my students all the time, it's great that you hope you get an A on the test. Maybe when you're done hoping for that, we can study a little bit, right? We want to have our feet on the ground too. So hope helps us. Hope is a kind of psychological capital. It's the ability to look at within yourself and say, this is a thing that I can connect to. This is a thing that I want differently in my life. And the more psychological capital you have, the longer you're able to keep going, because hope enables us to keep putting one foot in front of the other, believing in our heart of hearts that some sort of better outcome is coming. More hope is positively related to better health outcomes. People who are more hopeful are more likely to see the doctor and more likely to take medication. Better athletic outcomes, belief in the ability to succeed actually makes us run faster and jump higher if you look at the research on this. Better academic outcomes, right? Not just hoping I get an A on the physics test, but actually studying for the physics test. And better occupational outcomes. If you hope you're going to get a promotion, if you hope you're in the right field, you are actually going to work harder and be more successful. And if you're sitting there listening to this and you're like, oh, but that doesn't describe my job. My job is visible. I don't have any path forward. Then you hereby have my permission to try and change jobs, right? Because hope is what's going to drive us forward. And then hope beautifully is cumulative. It's what we call a virtuous cycle. Because when we feel better, we do better. And when we do better, we tend to feel better. So when we feel better, we do even better. And then when we do even better, we feel even better, and up and up and up and up and up and up, right? When we're more engaged with the world, we feel better, we achieve more, which encourage us more engagement. It fuels positive relationships with ourselves, with our loved ones, with the community, with our workplaces. So hope becomes a virtuous cycle. It feeds itself in a positive way. And since so much of mental health is a vicious cycle, I feel bad, so I did bad, which made me feel worse, so I did worse, down and down and down and down and down. If I can get somebody into a hope cycle, then that's an A+ for me in the therapy business. And ultimately, this comes down to what I like to call the paradox of hope. And this is where it starts to get into the gifted and neurodiverse space. Gifted people crave authenticity. They crave someone to be real with them, to tell the truth, and to look them and say, hey, I'm with you, and I'm going to be real with you. To have hope implies that things are not as we want them to be. They might be terrible, and we want them to be less terrible. They might be good, and we want them to be great. They might be 99, but we want it to be 100, right? But having hope implies that things are not as they want them to be. And so if you think about the things in your life, that you have hope for, to do so, you have to acknowledge that things are not the way you want them to be right now. And that's scary. There's a lot of vulnerability in that process, and that's okay. But one way we can say this, and we're going to connect this back to values a little bit more as well, but if your value is to be a good friend and you hope that you can fix your relationship with somebody, that would imply that your relationship is not the way you want it to be right now. And I don't really care whose fault it is, but there's power in acknowledging that and being authentic and saying, yeah, I would like this thing, this part of my life to be different. So maybe it's the relationships you're in or not in. Maybe it's the job you have, the salary you have. Maybe it's the way your body looks in the mirror. Maybe it's what your social media presence is, or how many laps you can run. Whatever it is, I hope I can do better releases you from being bound to where you are right now by saying, yeah, things are how they are right now, and there's value in that, but there's more value in what could possibly come next. And the idea here, and I always connect this to, sort of the therapeutic side of the paradox of hope, is that, listen, you already don't have the thing you want. You already don't have the date or the job or the salary or the partner or the partners or the body or whatever it is you want. So you might as well go out and get it, right? You might as well try, because the worst thing that happens is that nothing changes. If you ask your boss, hey, I want a promotion, your boss says no, well, you still have your job, right? So there's a certain freedom in realizing that you don't have what you want. And the worst thing that can happen is that nothing changes. If you can internalize that as a worldview, you're a lot closer to getting the things you want. Hope meaningfully benefits from community. And that's why you attend conferences, right? That's why you listen to speakers like me. That's why you go on Facebook and find these groups, because ultimately hope benefits community. It is possible to be hopeful alone, sure, but it is much easier to be hopeful in a community. We are social animals, right? So we learn from and for others. If other people are being hopeful, it twings our radar and says, well, what are they hopeful about? I want to know what they know, right? The reason Andy Dufresne was such a threat to the warden in Shawshank Redemption is that he kept having hope. And all the other prisoners were learning from Andy to have hope and to try to better themselves. That's a dangerous thing for a prison. Community limits negative and self-defeating beliefs. So if you are down on yourself and everybody in your community sees it, they're not going to walk by and be like, oh, there goes Mike again, crying asleep. It's no. Hey, Mike, I know things didn't go the way you want. You didn't get the promotion. Your prom date bailed on you, whatever the thing might be. Dust yourself off, pick yourself up. We're here for you. And that's not, I immediately felt better, but it is, I'm giving you a path to feel better. And that's what community does. Community also gives multiple perspectives to allow for multiple avenues to success. And we know that gifted kids can be a little myopic, perhaps more than a little. But the idea here is that maybe you were used to solving problems one way. You've always solved problems that way, over and 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 over. But if you're in community and that way that you've always solved problems either doesn't work this time or is not available to you for some reason, community says, well, what if you tried this? Or what happened when you tried this other thing? And it gets those balls rolling and it plants other seeds. So community benefits all, it raises everyone up. To that end, I have a story here that I think is particularly powerful. So let me paint you a quick picture. The year is 2010, and the U.S. men's national soccer team is playing a home game in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where I lived at the time. And in this game, we were playing England, and England was very highly rated, and we were not so highly rated. And so I show up at the stadium, Lincoln Financial Field, and I'm decked out in all my America gear. I've got my American flag cape. I've got an Uncle Sam hat. I'm wearing red, white, and blue socks. I'm in it to win it. And I get there, and all I'm seeing is red and white jerseys, right? All I'm seeing is the three Lions. I'm thinking to myself, how are we outnumbered in our own country, in our own stadium, in the birthplace of liberty of all places, right? So I'm starting to feel a little overwhelmed, and I'm realizing that I'm a man on an island right now. I don't have community. And as I'm sort of slinking my way through the stadium to my seats, I see in the far corner of the stadium a bunch of people jumping up and down and yelling and screaming. And of course, this interests me. So I walk a little closer, and then I hear through the din of the stadium, I hear them say, I, I believe, I believe that. And I'm like, I believe what? This is the slowest sentence in human history. I believe that we. And then, as one, several thousand people start chanting and screaming, I believe that we will win. I believe that we will win. And in that moment, I knew exactly where I wanted to be in that stadium. So I ditched my actual seat and I ran, I crammed in with them. I sort of like a concert, right? Where you don't really sit where your seat is. And I spent the next 90 minutes of soccer action jumping and screaming and playing a drum and chanting that over and over and over. And I'll tell you this, I felt so much better. It didn't change the outcome of the game. I actually had to look it up. We lost 2-1, in case you're wondering. But I remember feeling hopeful and feeling connected to other people. And that's my takeaway from that game, is that going from feeling alone and what that was doing to my hope to being connected to a community, and how that inspired me to not only want more, but hope for more. So I will show you a clip that I think will demonstrate this very well. Come on, YouTube. I tell you, I have watched that clip so many times in preparing and giving this talk, and every single time it gives me chills. So I hope that it was inspiring to you wherever you are right now. There we go. So, all right. So if you want to build hope in yourself, right, you can't always go to a 60,000 person soccer game, though I would highly recommend it. Let's figure out other ways to build hope in yourself. First thing is to look back on past wins. The best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. So you have won a lot more than you're giving yourself credit for. Think about past successes, thinking about things you've done well. They're there, they matter. And then you don't have to go out and achieve new things. You're giving yourself more credit for stuff that's already happened. It's free money. It's the psychological equivalent of finding a $20 bill in a pair of jeans. Like, ooh, that's $20. You had it the whole time, but now you found it. So you're very excited about it. Celebrate yourself and the current wins you have. This is what I like to call the yes test. So if you're watching this and you ate breakfast, the most important meal of the day, give yourself a little yes, right? So go ahead, I'll let you do it. Cue the awkward silence. All right, good. So whatever you did, shower, brush your teeth, put on clean clothes, leave the house, go for a walk, feed your cat, whatever that thing is, you get yourself a yes for every one of those, because our brains are lazy and they don't pay attention to everything we do, especially if the things we do are rote, right? And we do them every day. But all those things matter. They all have value, right? Now, I'm not saying that because you had a cup of coffee this morning, you get to kick your feet up and take the rest of the day off, though that would be lovely. But it means you get to give yourself credit for the good things you do. Another thing is to be creative. Think about what you haven't tried. If you found yourself stuck with your head against the wall, a good time to think about what else you could do. Reflect on yourself, pray if that's your thing, meditate, take time and space to be still with your thoughts and reflect on yourself. Filter your inputs, no doom scrolling. I am a very guilty of doom scrolling person, but the fact of the matter is that the news isn't going to get any better and social media isn't going to get any more positive. At some point, you put the phone down or you clicked off CNN or you stop changing emails with your super stressed out uncle because it's not going to help you. At some point, the world is what it is, and we build our hope off that platform. And we can still hope in others. A lot of times it's easier to show up for other people than it is for ourselves. It's a funny quirk of human nature. So if you're feeling hopeless, find somebody in your life who's also feeling hopeless and try to help them. We can create atmospheres of hope. Now, atmospheres of hope, take place, right? And that's the power of community again. So whatever organization you're in, whether it's a family, a small business, a large corporation, a school, a university, a therapy space, whatever that is, we promote atmospheres of hope by setting those SMART goals again, aligning our goals with our values. What matters to us? Is it family? Is it honesty? Is it integrity? Is it thoroughness? Whatever those things are, whatever our core values are, we want to align our hope goals with that. Then we want to cultivate a mindset that supports that. I'm always learning that I can take my failures and move forward. As I am fond of saying, FAIL is an acronym for frequent attempts in learning. It's a lot easier to have hope if you conceptualize failure as a step in the right direction rather than this is the end of that chapter. And then take perspective. Make time to check in with yourself, reflect, pray, meditate, those sort of things to see how you're doing and see how far you've come. I guarantee you that if you see yourself as a work in progress on a developmental curve, you'll realize that you've come further than you could have ever possibly imagined, regardless of how far there is to go. At some point, the mountain that is in front of us is in our rear view. And while we are not climbing the mountain anymore, the mountain is still with us. The mountain never leaves us. And that's a very cool way to see how far we've come. Here's a nice, what they call the hope pinwheel. They are the ways that hope ideas interact with the environment to keep that pinwheel spinning. Be clear with yourself and honest with yourself. Reflect on what you're doing and how far you've come. Adapt to new information and new situations. Those of us who have had to adapt to online environments during COVID, which by the way is pretty much all of us, we've adapted. We've shown hope in a situation that could have easily been hopeless. We implement changes. We implement our SMART goals. We set goals and we plan and we have a vision for the future. We allow ourselves to tap into the part of hope that says things are not the way I want them to be, but I could imagine them another way, a better way. So one way to do all this is something I like to call the ice cream sundae test. Now, if we were in person, I would drag somebody up on stage or drag somebody out of the Zoom audience and do this. But because we are doing this virtually, I'm going to walk you through it yourselves. So imagine you're making yourself an ice cream sundae and you pick the bowl you want. I'm going to pick a large white bowl and I'm going to pick 3 scoops of ice cream. I'm going to pick Rocky Road, salted caramel, and fudge ripple. Those are 3 good flavors. And then I'm going to pick my toppings. I'm going to pick some chocolate sauce, some crushed walnuts, some rainbow sprinkles, some gummy bears, some butterscotch sauce. Probably do some bananas. I'm going to throw some whipped cream on top of that. And then I'm going to put a cherry on top of that sundae. So I have white bowl, 3 scoops of ice cream, several yummy toppings, whipped cream, and now I have a cherry. Now, guys, here's the bad news. Here's the bummer part. The cherry is rotten. I picked a bad cherry. I'm sorry. And I am forced with a choice. What do I do with my ice cream sundae, which I got to choose, that has a bad cherry on top? Now, there's probably some part of you that's going, throw the whole thing away. It's gross. The cherry made it gross. Here's where we stop ourselves and we say, wait a second. What part of this is really gross? Because it's just the cherry. So if I went ping and knocked the cherry off, the rest of the ice cream sundae is good. Now, it isn't 100% of what I wanted. I'll acknowledge that. But it's 97% of what I wanted. And that's pretty darn good, right? What we're modeling here is what we call bottom-up thinking rather than top-down thinking. Top-down thinking is you expect to get 100, and anything that's less than that is a problem. Oh, I got a 97% on this test. I got one wrong. versus I got a 97% on the test. I knew 97% of the material. That's not bad, right? So think about it. If bottom up thinking, I got the bowl I wanted. I got the flavors of ice cream I wanted. I got the toppings I wanted. I got whipped cream. And yeah, I wish there was a good cherry, but look how high I climbed, right? So when you find yourself losing hope, there's a decent chance you're doing top down thinking. You're thinking things should be a particular way and they're not, and you're blaming yourself for whatever is less than that. Invert that process. What you want might be several flights of stairs up, but you're on the staircase. That means we can keep moving towards our goal through bottom up thinking. So yes, everything is going to plan. The plan. I hope it all works out. So I will say this very clearly to all of you because I love you all very much. Hope is not a good plan, right? Pray for rain, but dig a well. So we have to connect our hope to physical actions. So if you've ever said to a partner or a child or a friend, it's going to be okay. Here's the thing. Do you really know that? Because you actually don't. If we say it's going to be okay, it runs the risk of invalidating their feelings. It's not okay to them right now. Now, that not okay might last 30 seconds. It might last 30 minutes. It might last 30 years. We don't know. But the idea here is that we acknowledge their feeling and we sit there with it. We own that because most of the time we say it's going to be okay for our own benefit because their discomfort makes us uncomfortable. And that's okay. We own that, right? Listen, I'm a therapist. This is what I do for a living. And I can't tell you how many times I've had to hold myself back for saying it's going to be okay because the people who are in my office and they're sad and their lives have been hard or difficult, they're struggling and they're wishing their lives were better. It's hard for me to not just give them even sort of a basic boilerplate. It'll be okay. Because I would much rather be honest, right? Gifted kids can smell inauthenticity a mile away. If you don't know what's going to be okay, then don't say it. Say, hey, this sucks. I'm with you. And when they're ready, you can talk about regression to the mean, that most of our lives are okay and they get a little bit more okay as we go. And you're going to have high highs and low lows, but sooner or later they balance out. So there is some math that can support this, but we can't lead with that. We can only give it to them when we're ready. Because a lot of times it's going to be okay runs into this idea of toxic positivity. Now, if you haven't seen toxic positivity, you've almost certainly experienced it, but you may not have known it was called this. So, toxic positivity is the excessive and ineffective overgeneralization of a happy, optimistic state across all situations at all times, no matter what. It results in the denial, minimization, and invalidation of authentic human emotional experience, like bad days, like struggle, like pain, like sadness, like heartbreak. Things happen. You know, I remember I had a coworker who was fairly toxically positive, and we had another coworker who had lost their dad in a pretty horrific car accident. And she looks at her, she goes, "Look on the bright side." And I'm sitting there being like, "What bright side? There's no bright side right now." Like, and I understand what she was trying to do, but it comes across as toxically positive, right? Be authentic, right? By disallowing the existence of certain feelings, we fall into a state of denial and we repress our emotions. And a repressed emotion shows up sooner or later, usually bigger than when we sent it down. So if you were dealing with toxic positivity, you might be hiding or masking your true feelings, trying to just get on with it by stuffing or dismissing an emotion, feeling guilty for feeling our feelings, minimizing other people's experiences with feel good quotes like, "Look on the bright side that your dad is dead." Trying to give someone perspective like it could be worse instead of validating their emotional experience, shaming or chastising others for expressing frustration or anything other than positivity, and brushing off things that bother you with a "it is what it is," right? Those are all signs that you may be dealing with toxic positivity. And the best example of this is from one of the saddest movies I think that has ever existed, Inside Out by Pixar. And in this scene right here, Bing Bong has lost his rocket wagon over the edge into the unconscious. And Joy, who's trying to get them all back to headquarters, is like, "It's okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. Let's go, 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 go." And Bing Bong is not moving. Bing Bong is sitting and crying. And it isn't until sadness sits with him and validates his feelings and says how sorry she is that he's lost his wagon and how much she knows it meant to him that he's able to get up and move forward. We may want people to move on with the best of intentions, but sometimes the best way to get someone to move on is to acknowledge how they're feeling, even if that's unpleasant, maybe even especially if that's unpleasant. So, great book if you haven't read it. And the idea here is that Mark Manson said everything worthwhile in life is won through surmounting the associated negative experience. Any attempt to escape the negative, to avoid it or quash it or silence it, it only backfires. Real hope comes with owning the pain to overcome it. And I love that quote, and it's a great book, and it's very relevant to what we're talking about here because there's a paradox of hope. We have to own the pain that comes with it, with not having life as we want it to be, and however that manifests. Because only through owning that can we give ourselves permission and release ourselves to go chase our goals. So we get back to therapy, right? All of this allows us to get back to therapy. Feel your feelings, be authentic. And one of the ways this shows up in therapy is when your therapist asks you if you've ever had suicidal thoughts or behaviors. A lot of people think that they can't talk about that. And I'm here to tell you that you can. And you can have an open and honest conversation, and a therapist can say to you, my job is to support you here. Some therapists will still say, I heard the word suicide, I'm calling 911. But if you lay things out in an honest way, you can tell them that 73% of American adults reported having suicidal thoughts in the last year. And certainly not all of those people have ended up in the hospital. So there is a space to feel those feelings authentically and process them in a safe space. As Carl Jung said, the paradox is as soon as I accept myself as I am, I can begin to change. There's a beauty to that, right? But we first have to accept ourselves, the good, the bad, and the ugly. The challenges we face are not about our personal worth. You might be starting at step 9 and you have one step left to go. You might be starting in the sub basement, but they're not about your personal worth. It's not a reflection of your value. Even if you caused that problem, it's just where you are starting. It's just where you are right now. One good way to identify the values that are going to connect to our hope, that's going to give us the goals to make ourselves optimistic, is to ask the miracle question. The miracle question is a therapy technique where if you woke up tomorrow and the world is exactly as you wanted it to be, how would you want that to be? What would that look like? Because one of the things that therapy is really good for is it gives us space and time to think about stuff like that. In the drudgery of the day-to-day life where we're running, doing, thinking, feeling, we don't really have time to ask ourselves the big questions. And when we're not thinking about our values, we may become detached from them. The miracle question or any other journaling activity around values may reconnect us to that and may ignite our hope. And when in doubt, we focus on things that we can control about ourselves. A lot of times we lose hope because of our environments. Like I said before, the world is on fire. I can't control that. All I can do is recycle and vote in my elections and try and take care of myself and my property and be a safe driver and do the best work I can do and be the best husband, father, partner, psychologist I can be. And I acknowledge that there's a lot out there I can't do anything about, and that bums me out. But if I accept that I can't control it, it's easier for me to let it go and focus on the stuff I can control, which is going to give me more hope. There are lots of risk factors for having hope, and for then, of course, losing it. Existential depression runs deep in the gifted population. I think we've all seen it or felt it. Gifted people have a ruminative cognitive style. We turn thoughts over and over and over and over and over and over and over, which can somehow make them worse. When we think about, the research shows that there are 3 predictive factors for suicide: a sense of worthlessness, I suck; a sense of helplessness, I will never get better, no one can help me; and hopelessness, why even try? And this is why hope is that psychological capital. It's a thing we can pull withdrawals from if we need to protect us against scary thoughts and unpleasant feelings and a sense that it's all going down anyway, so I try. We don't have the luxury of not trying. We have the duty, the honor, the privilege of picking ourselves up and trying to make the world a better place. And therapy can help you with that. So can values, so can religion or meditation. And hopefully this talk is lighting that fire in you, because there are so many reasons to have hope, despite all the Sturm and Drang out there that tells us otherwise. So connect to that hope. And oftentimes, especially for the gifted or twice exceptional populations, poor fits an environment, right? We talked about internal versus external locus of control. A poor fit of environment reminds us of how many things are out of our control, and they're not supporting us and seeing us and playing to our strengths. You're not going to have a lot of hope if your environment doesn't support that and connect to the things you really want to be. Oftentimes, as a psychologist, the first intervention I do for gifted kids is to find out what kind of schooling fits best for them. If they're in public school and that's a bad fit, can we get them to a private school? Can we homeschool? Can we cyber school? Can we connect them with gifted homeschoolers for them? Like, what is out there? Because that's a much bigger return on investment than I can give them in my 1 hour a week of therapy, right? So we want to find a good fit in your environment. And it's a thing to think about what school is, right? As we think about the school environment, the school is a place to learn, sure, to be inspired by great teachers, by classmates, by lessons. It's a place to get access to materials and opportunities. Certainly, I didn't have a piano in my house growing up. I had one in school, learned how to play the piano in school. For many kids, it's a place to eat. For many kids, school is a place to be warm in the winter or cool in the summer if your house doesn't have heating or cooling. It's a place to be around people who love you or like you. A lot of our kids come from environments at home where they are not liked or loved. And if we get to create that environment for them, then we are doing a huge service to the world. And we may not think of it that way, but trust me when I say that that's what's happening. School is so much more than what we teach. So our interventions to create hope at school, they might not actually be about learning. They might be about human safety. They might be about value as a person. I work with a young man down in Florida. He's a recent immigrant to this country. He's really struggling to accommodate to schools here. But he fell in with the football team and he plays football. And on the roster of 63 people, he's the 63rd guy. He is probably never going to see the field, right? And his grades are poor. So the principal wanted to cut him from the team. You can't play because your grades are so bad. And I got on a Zoom call with him and I said, sir, I am begging you, begging you. The only reason this kid is getting up and going to school is because of the football team. He has friends there. He works out. They make sure he eats. He gets to go places in Florida that he would never go. Like, this is the thing. This is his hope. Don't take this from him. I was like, listen, we'll sign a waiver that he'll never play. Fine. But let him go to practice. Let him dress for the games. And he said, fine. All right, I'll take you up on that. But his grades have to improve. And I said, and I immediately pivoted to let's make a SMART goal, right? Like, we need to pivot. But the idea here is that, like, football has nothing to do with calculus. It has nothing to do with European history. It has nothing to do with Tom Sawyer. But to get him at school and give those things a fighting chance to get through this kid's brain and help him learn, his hope cannot be extinguished. And that's our job. So what this boils down to is one of my biggest therapy sayings is, I'm going to believe the good things about you until you can too. So there's a lot of hope in this sentence, because my job as a therapist is to believe the good things about you, to see them, to elevate them, to turn up the volume on them. But I'm not going to do that by myself forever. I want you to join me. I hope, paradoxically, that the day comes where you don't need me anymore. My job is to make myself irrelevant, right? And that way I'm in the business of hope. I'm in the business of making myself a smaller and smaller part of your life until you've got your little pocket Dr. Matt in your brain that says the things I say. You're like, right, I got this. I can give myself credit for the good things I can do. I can find hope by connecting to my values. And you go out there and you do it. And that's a beautiful thing. So I will believe those good things about you until you can too. So here's how to find me if you have questions. I'm drmattzakreski.com, Dr. Matt, the neurodiversitycollective.com, and we have a really wonderful Facebook community. Please come join us there. This was a wonderful talk, really just a treat to get to talk about this. I hope wherever you are watching this, this was inspiring and powerful and helps you connect to your own hope and your own values. Please feel free to drop me a line to let me know how it goes. And I hope I see you around the bend someday. I hope that you stay well and safe and happy. And I hope that we're together soon. So this is Dr. Matt signing off. Take care, you guys.